the cycle, continuing into the living moment, the impulse that first moved the world. Because our eyes are closed to the paradox of the double focus, we return the deed as accomplished amid danger and great pain by a vigorous arm, whereas from the other perspective it is like the ark, the dragon slaying of Tiamat by Marduk, only a bringing to pass of the inevitable. The supreme hero, however, is not the one who merely continues the dynamics of the cosmogonic round, but he who opens the eye, so that through all the comings and goings, delights and agonies of the world panorama, the one presence will be seen again. This requires a deeper wisdom than the other and results in a pattern not of action, but of significant representation. The symbol of the first is the virtuous sword of the second, the scepter of the dominion of the book of the law. The characteristic adventure of the first is the winning of the bride. The bride is life. The adventures of the second is the going to the Father, and the Father is the inevitable unknown. Adventures of the second type fit directly into the patterns of religious iconography. Even in a simple folk tale, a depth is suddenly sounded when the son of the Virgin one day asks of his mother, "Who is my father?" The question touches the problem of man and the inevitable. The familiar myth motives of the atonement inevitably follow. The Pueblo hero, Water Jar Boy, asked the question of his mother, "Who is my father?" He said, "I don't know," she said. He asked her again, "Who is my father?" But she just kept on crying and did not answer. "Where is my father's home?" he asked. She could not tell him. "Tomorrow I am going to find my father." "You cannot find your father," she said. "I never go with any boy, so there is no place where you can look for your father." But the boy said, "I have a father. I know where he is living. I'm going to see him." The mother did not want him to go, but he wanted to go. So early next morning she fixed a lunch for him, and he went off to the southeast, where they call the spring Weupaidi, Horse Mesa Point. He was coming close to that spring. He saw somebody walking a little way from the spring. He went up to him. It was a man. He asked the boy, "Where are you going?" "I am going to see my father," he said. "Who is your father?" said the man. "Well, my father is living in this spring." "You will never find your father." "Well, I want to go into the spring," he said. "He is living inside it." "Who is your father?" said the man again. "Well, I think you are my father," said the boy. "How do you know I am your father?" said the man. "Well, I know you are my father." Then the man just looked at him to scare him. The boy kept saying, "You are my father." Pretty soon the man said, "Yes, I am your father. I came out of that spring to meet you," and he put his arm around the boy's neck. His father was very glad his boy had come, and he took him down inside the spring, where the goal of the hero's effort is the discovery of the unknown father. The basic symbolism remains that of the tests and of the self-revealing way. In the above example, the test is reduced to the persistent questions and a frightening look. In the earlier tale of the clam wife, the sons were tried with a bamboo knife. We have seen in our review of the adventure of the hero to what degrees the severity of the father can go. For the congregation of Jonathan Edwards, he became a veritable ogre. The hero, blessed by the father, returns to represent the father among men as teacher Moses or as Emperor Huang Ti. His word is law. Since he is now centered in the source, he makes visible the repose and harmony of the central place. He is a reflection of the world axis from which the concentric circles spread, and the world mountain, the world tree. He is the perfect microcosm, mirror of the macrocosm. To see him is to perceive the meaning of existence. From his presence boons go out. His word is the wind of life. But a deterioration may take place in the character of the representative of the father. Such a crisis is described in the Zoroastrian Persian legend of the emperor of the Golden Age, Jamshid. All looked upon the throne and heard intoxicated with their loud applause. I am unequaled, for me to the earth owes all its science. Never did exist a sovereignty like mine, beneficent and glorious, driving from the populous land disease and want, domestic joy and rest proceed from me. All that is good and great wastes my behest, and the universal voice declares the splendor of my government. Beyond whatever human heart conceived in me, the only monarch of the world. Soon as these words had buried from his lips words impious and insulting to high heaven, his earthly grandeur faded. Then all tongues grew clamorous and bold. The day of Jemshid passed into gloom, his brightness all obscured. What said the moralist? When thou wert a king, thy subjects were obedient, but wherever proudly neglects the worship of his God, brings desolation from his house and home. And when he marked the insolence of his people, he knew the wrath of heaven had been provoked, and terror overcame him. No longer referring to the boons of his reign to their transcendent source, the emperor breaks the stereoptic vision which it is his road to sustain. He is no longer the mediator between the two worlds. Man's perspective flattens to include only the human term of the equation, and the experience of a supernal power immediately fails. The upholding idea of the community is lost. Force is all that binds it. The emperor becomes the tyrant ogre, the usurper from whom the world is now to be saved. In the sixth section, it's called the hero as world redeemer. 2 degrees of initiation are to be distinguished in the mansion of the Father. From the first the Son returns as emissary, but from the second with the knowledge that I and the Father are one. Heroes of this second higher illumination are the world redeemers, the so-called incarnations in the highest sense. Their myths open out to cosmic proportions. Their words carry an authority beyond anything pronounced by the heroes of the scepter and the book. All of you watch me, don't look around, said the hero of Jikarila Apache, killer of all enemies. Listen to what I say. The world is just as big as my body. The world is as large as my word, and the world is as large as my prayers. The sky is only as large as my words and my prayers. The seasons are only as great as my body, my words, and my prayer. It is the same with the waters. My body, my words, my prayer are greater than the waters. Whosoever believes me, whosoever listens to what I say, will have a long life. One who doesn't listen, who thinks in some evil way, will have a short life. Don't think I am in the east, south, west, or north. The earth is my body. I am there. I am all over. Don't think I am only under the earth, or up in the sky, or only in the seasons, or on the other side of the waters. These are all my body. It is the truth that the underworld, the sky, the seasons, the water are all my body. I am all over. I have already given you that which you have to make an offering to me. You have 2 kinds of pipe, and you have the mountain tobacco. The work of the incarnation is to refute by his presence the pretensions of the tyrant ogre. This latter has occluded the source of grace with the shadow of his limited personality. The incarnation, utterly free of such ego consciousness, is a direct manifestation of the law. On a grandiose scale, he enacts the hero life, performs the hero deeds, slays the monster, but it is all with the freedom of a work done only to make evident to the eye what might have been accomplished equally well with a mere thought. Khan's the cruel uncle of Krishna, usurper of his own father's throne, in the city of Mathura, heard a voice one day that said to him, "Thy enemy is born, thy death is certain." Krishna and his early brothers, Balarama, had been spirited to the cowards from their mother's womb to protect them from this Indian counterpart of Nimrod, and he had sent demons after them. Putana of the poison milk was the first, but all they had been undone. soldiers in the city, but the lads slew the soldiers and returned to their camp. They told the cowards they had an interesting tour, then ate their suppers and went to bed. Cons that night had ominous dreams. When he woke, he ordered the stadium prepared for the tournament and trumpets blown for assembly. Krishna and Balarama arrived as jugglers, followed by the cowards, their friends. When they entered the gate, there was a furious elephant ready to crush them, mighty as 10,000 common elephants. The driver rode directly at Krishna. Balarama gave it such a blow with his fist that it halted, started back. The driver rode it again, but the two brothers struck it at the ground, and it was dead. The youths walked into the field. Everybody saw what his own nature revealed to him. The wrestlers thought Krishna a wrestler. The woman thought him the treasure of beauty. The gods knew him as their lord, and Kans thought he was Mara, death himself. And when he had undone every one of the wrestlers sent against him, slaying finally the strongest, he kept to the royal dais, dragged the tyrant by the hair, and killed him. Men, gods, and saints were delighted, but the king's wives came forth to mourn. Krishna, seeing their grief, comforted them with his primal wisdom. Mother, he said, do not grieve. No one can live and not die. To imagine oneself as possessing anything is to be mistaken. Nobody is father, mother, or son. There is only the continuous round of birth and death. The legends of the Redeemer describe the period of desolation as caused by a moral fault on the part of man. Adam in the garden, Jamshid on the throne. Yet from the standpoint of the cosmogonic cycle, a regular alteration of fair and foul is characteristic of the spectacle of time. Just as in the history of the universe, so also in that of nations, emanation leads to dissolution, youth to age, birth to death, form creative vitality to the dead weight of inertia. Life surges, precipitating forms, and then ebbs, leaving jetsam behind. The golden age, the reign of the world emperor, alternates in the pulse of every moment of life, and with the wasteland, the reigns of the tyrant. The god who is the creator becomes the destroyer in the end. From this point of view, the tyrant ogre is no less representative of the father than the earlier world emperor whose position he usurped, or than the brilliant hero, the sun, who is to supplant him. He is the representative of the steadfast, as the hero is the carrier of the changing. And since every moment of time bursts free from the fetters of the moment before, so this dragon holdfast is pictured as of the generation immediately preceding that of the Savior of the world. Stated in direct terms, the work of the hero is to slay the tenacious aspect of the father, dragon, tester, ogre, king, and release from its ban the vital energies that will feed the universe. This can be done either in accordance with the father's will or against his will. He may choose death for his children's sake, or it may be that the gods impose the passion upon him, making him their sacrificial victim. These are not contradictory doctrines, but different ways of telling one and the same story. In reality, slayer and dragon, sacrificer and victim are of one mind behind the scenes, where there is no polarity of contraries, but mortal enemies on the stage, where the everlasting war of the gods and the titans is displayed. In any case, the dragon father remains a pleroma, no more diminished by what he exhales than he is increased by what he repossesses. He is the death on whom our life depends, and the question is, death one or many? The answer is many made. He is one as he is there, but many as he is in his children here. The hero of yesterday becomes the tyrant of tomorrow, unless he crucifies himself today. From the point of view of the present, there is such a recklessness in this deliverance of the future that it appears to be nihilistic. The words of Krishna, the world's savior, to the wives of the dead, Kans carry a frightening overtone. So do the words of Jesus. I came not to send peace, but a sword. For I am come to set a man at variance against his father, and the daughter against her mother, and her daughter-in-law against her mother-in-law. And a man's foes shall be they of his own household. He that loveth father or mother more than me is not worthy of me, and he that loveth son or daughter more than me is not worthy of me. To protect the unprepared, mythology veils such ultimate revelations under half-obscuring guises, while yet insisting on the gradually instructive form. The savior figure was eliminating the tyrant father, and then himself assumes the crown, stepping into his sire's instead. To soften the harsh patricide, the legend represents the father as some cruel uncle or usurping Nimrod. Nevertheless, the half-hidden fact remains. Once it is glimpsed, the entire spectacle buckles. The son slays the father, but the son and the father are one. The enigmatical figures dissolve back into the primal chaos. This is the wisdom of the end and the re-beginning of the world. And now we're doing section 7, the hero as saint. Before we proceed to the last episode of life, one more hero type remains to be mentioned: the saint or ascetic, the world renouncer, endowed with a pure understanding, restraining the self with firmness, turning away from sound and other objects, and abandoning love and hatred, dwelling in solitude, eating but little, controlling the speech, body and mind, ever engaged in meditation and concentration, and cultivating freedom from passion, forsaking conceit and power, pride and lust, wrath and possessions, tranquil in heart and free from ego. He becomes the worthy of becoming one with the imperishable. The pattern is that of going to the Father, but to the unmanifest rather than the manifest aspect, taking the step that the Bodhisattva renounced, that from which there is no return, not the paradox of the dual perspective, but the ultimate claim of the unseen is here intended. The ego is burnt out. Like a dead leaf in a breeze, the body continues to move about the earth, but the soul is dissolved already in the ocean of bliss. Thomas Aquinas says the result of a mystical experience while celebrating Mass in Naples, put his pen and ink on the shelf and left the last chapters of his Summa Theologica to be completed by another hand. My writing days, he stated, are over, for such things have been revealed to me that all I have written and taught seems of but small account to me, whereof I hope in my God that even as the end has come to my teaching, so too may soon come to my life. Shortly thereafter, in his 49th year, he died. Beyond life, these heroes are beyond the myth also. Neither do they treat of any more, nor can the myth properly treat of them. Their legends are rehearsed, but the pious sentiments and lessons of the biographies are necessarily inadequate, little better than pathos. They have stepped away from the realm of forms into which the incarnation descends, and to which the Bodhisattva remains, the realm of the manifest profile of the great face. Once the hidden profile has been discovered, myth is the penultimate silence and ultimate word. The moment the spirit passes to the hidden silence, alone remains. King Oedipus came to know that the woman he had married was his mother. The man he had slain his father. He plucked his eyes out and wandered in penance over the earth. The Freudians declare that each of us is slaying his father and marrying his mother all the time, only unconsciously. Their roundabout symbolic ways of doing this and the rationalizations of the consequent compulsive activity constitute our individual lives and common civilization. Should the feelings chance to become aware of the real import of the world's acts and thoughts, one would know what Oedipus knew. The flesh would suddenly appear to be an ocean of self-violation. This is the sense of the legend of Pope Gregory the Great, born of incest, living in incest. Aghast, he flees to a rock in the sea, and there does penance for his very life. The tree has now become the cross, and the white youth sucking milk has become the crucified swallowing gall. Corruption. Crawls his beatitude in God. He has placed his real seal upon me that I may prefer to love to him. The winter has passed, the turtle dove sings, and the vineyards burst into blossom. With his own ring, my Lord Jesus Christ has wed me and crowned me with a crown as his bride. The robe with which the Lord has clothed me is a robe of splendor, with gold interwove, and the necklace with which he had adorned me is beyond all price. And the 8th section is called The Departure of the Hero. The last act in the biography of the hero is that of the death or departure. Here the whole sense of the life is epitomized. Needless to say, the hero would be no hero if death held for him any terror. The first condition is reconciliation with the grave. While sitting under the oak of Mamre, Abraham perceived a flashing of light and smell of sweet odor, and turned around till he saw death coming towards him in great glory and beauty. And death said unto Abraham, Think not, Abraham, that this is beauty is mine, or that I come thus to every man. Nay, but if any one is righteous like thee, I thus take a crown and come to him. But if he is a sinner, I come in great corruption, and out of their sins I make a crown for my head. And I shake them with great fear, so that they are dismayed. Abraham said to him, And art thou indeed he as that is called death? He answered and said, I am the bitter name. But Abraham answered, I will not go with thee. And Abraham said to death, Show us thy corruption. And death revealed his corruption, showing 2 heads, the one the head of a serpent, and the other was like a sword. All the servants of Abraham, looking at the fierce mien of death, died. But Abraham prayed to the Lord, and he raised them up. And as the looks of death were not able to cause Abraham's soul to depart from him, God removed the soul of Abraham as in a dream, and the archangel Michael took it up into heaven. After great praise and glory had been given to the Lord by the angels who brought Abraham's soul, and after Abraham bowed down to worship, then came the voice of God, saying thus, Take my friend Abraham in this paradise, where are the tabernacles of my righteous ones, and the abodes of my saints Isaac and Jacob, in his bosom, where there is no trouble, no grief, nor sighing, but peace and rejoicing, life unending. Compare the following dream. I was on a bridge where I met a blind fiddler. Everyone was tossing coins into his hat. I came closer and perceived that the musician was not blind. He had a squint, and was looking at me with a crooked glance from the side. Suddenly there was a little old woman sitting at the side of the road. It was dark, and I was afraid. Where does this road lead? I thought. A young peasant came along, and the road took me by the hand. Do you want to come home? He said, and drink coffee. Let me go. You are holding me too tight, I cried, and then I woke. The hero who is in his life represented, the dual perspective after his death, is still a synthesizing image like Charlemagne. He sleeps only and will arise in the hour of destiny, or he is among us under another form. The Aztecs tell of the feathered serpent and the ancient city of Tolan in the golden age of its prosperity. He was the teacher of the arts, originator of the calendar, and the giver of maize. He and his people were overcome at the close of their time by the stronger magic of an invading race, the Aztecs. The warrior hero of the young people and their era broke the city of Tolan, and the feathered serpent, king of the golden age, burnt his dwellings behind him, buried his treasures in the mountains, transformed his chocolate trees into mesquite, commanded the multicolored birds, his servants, to fly before him, and departed in great sorrow. And he came to a city where there was a tree, a very large tree, and he went over to the tree, sat down beneath it, and gazed into a mirror that was brought to him. I am old, he said, and the place was named the Old Quashakan. Resting again at another place along the way, and looking back in the direction of his Tolan, he wept, and his tears went through a rock. his ashes. His soul became the morning star. The life-eager hero can resist death and postpone his faith for another time. As it is written, in his sleep heard a cry, so terrible and fearful that he fell out of his bed upon the ground like a sack in the east wing of the house. He rushed forth without weapons, followed by Ymir his wife, who carried his arms and garments, and he discovered a chariot harnessed with a chestnut horse that had but one leg, the bull passing through its body out at the forehead. Within sat a woman, her eyebrows red, and a crimson mantle around her. A very big man walked alongside, also in a coat of crimson, carrying a forked staff of hazelwood and driving a cow. Kukulkan claimed the cow as his own. The woman challenged him, and Kukulkan then demanded to know why she was speaking instead of the big man. She answered that the man was Argarth. Well, so to be sure, said Kukulkan, the length of the name is astonishing. The woman to whom you speak, said the big man, is called Fairbore. You are making a fool of me, said Kukulkan, and he made a leap into the chariot, but his 2 feet on her shoulders and his spear on the parting of her hair. Do not play your sharp weapons on me, she said. Then tell me your true name, said Kukulkan. Go further off from me then, she said. I am a female satirist, and I carry off this cow as a reward for a poem. Let us hear your poem, said Kukulkan. Only move further off, she said. Your shaking over my head will not influence me. Kukulkan moved off until he was between the 2 wheels of the chariot. The woman sang at him a song of challenge and insult. He prepared to spring again, but in an instant, the horse, the woman, the chariot, and man, and the cow disappeared, and on the branch of a tree was a black bird. A dangerous, enchanted woman you are, said Kukulkan to the black bird, for he now realized that she was the battle goddess Bab, or Morrigan. If I had only known that it was you, we should not have parted thus. What you have done, replied the bird, will bring you ill luck. You cannot harm me, said Kukulkan. Certainly I can, said the woman. I am guarding your deathbed, and I shall be guarding it henceforth. Then the enchantress told him that she was taking the cow from the fairy hill of Cruchan to be bred by the bull of the big man who was Culain, and when her calf was a year old, Kukulkan would die. She herself would come against him when he would be engaged at a certain ford with a man as strong as victorious, as dexterous, as terrible, as untiring, as noble, as brave, as great as himself. I will become an eel, she said, and I will throw a noose around thy feet in the ford. Kukulkan exchanged threats with her, and she disappeared into the ground. But the following year, at the foretold foray at the ford, he overcame her and actually lived to die another day. A curious, perhaps playful echo of the symbolism of salvation in a yonder world dimly sounds in the final passage of the Pueblo folktale of Water Jar Boy. A lot of people were living down inside the spring. Women and girls, they all ran to the boy and put their arms around him because they were glad to see the child that had come to their house. Thus the boy found his father and his aunts too. Well, the boy stayed there one night, and next day he went back home and told his mother he had found his father. Then his mother got sick and died. Then the boy said to himself, no use for me to live with these people. So he left them and went to the spring, and there was his mother. That was the way he and his mother went to live with his father. His father was Evaobia, Water Snake Red. He said he could not live with them over at Sikayaki. That was the reason he made the boy's mother sick, so she died and came over here to live with me, said his father. Now we will live here together, said Avayeo to his son. That's the way that boy and his mother went to the spring to live there. This story, like that of the clam wife, repeats point for point the mythical narrative. The 2 stories are charming in their apparent innocence conscious to the last degree. The Blessed One, accompanied by a large congregation of priests, drew near to the further bank of the Hiranavati River and to the city of Kusinara and the Saltree Grove Upavatana of the Malice, and having drawn near, he addresses the Venerable Ananda. Be so good, Ananda, as to spread me a couch with its head to the north between twin sal trees. I am weary, Ananda, and wish to lie down. Yes, Reverend Sir, said the Venerable Ananda to the Blessed One in his assent, and spread the couch with its head to the north between twin sal trees. Then the Blessed One lay down on his right side after the manner of a lion, and placing foot on foot remained mindful and conscious. Now at that time the twin sal trees had completely burst forth into bloom, though it was not the flowering season, and the blossoms scattered themselves over the body of the Tathagata, and strewn and sprinkled themselves in worship of the Tathagata. Also heavenly sandalwood powder fell upon the sky, and this scattered itself over the body of the Tathagata, and strewed and sprinkled itself in worship of the Tathagata. And music sounded in the sky in worship of the Tathagata, and heavenly choruses were heard to sing in worship of the Tathagata. During the conversations which then took place as the Tathagata lay like a lion on his side, a large priest, the Venerable Upavana, stood in front fanning him. The Blessed One briefly ordered him to step aside, whereupon the body ascendant of the Blessed One Ananda complained to the Blessed One. Reverend Sir, he said, what pray was the reason, and what was the cause that the Blessed One was harsh to the Venerable Upavana, saying, Step aside, O priest, stand not in front of me. The Blessed One replied, Ananda, almost all the deities throughout 10,000 worlds have come together to behold the Tathagata. For an extent, Ananda, of 12 leagues about the city Kusinara and the side tree grove Upavata of the Malice, there is not a spot of ground large enough to stick the point of a hair into that is not pervaded by powerful deities, and these deities, Ananda, are angered, saying, From afar have we come to behold the Tathagata, but have seldom and on rare occasions does Tathagata, a saint and supreme Buddha, arise in the world, and now tonight in the last watch will the Tathagata pass into nirvana. But this powerful priest stands in front of the Blessed One, concealing him, and we have no chance to see the Tathagata, although his last moments are near. Thus, Ananda, are these deities angry? What are the deities doing, Reverend Sir, whom the Blessed One perceives? Some of the deities, Ananda, are in the air with their minds engrossed by earthly things, and they let fly their hair and cry aloud, and stretch out their arms and cry aloud, and fall ahead to the ground and roll to and fro, saying, All too soon will the Blessed One pass into nirvana. All too soon will the last light of the world vanish from sight. Some of the deities, Ananda, are on the earth with their minds engrossed by earthly things, and they let fly their hair and cry aloud, and stretch out their arms and cry aloud, and fall headlong on the ground and roll to and fro, saying, All too soon will the Blessed One pass into nirvana. All too soon will the Happy One pass into nirvana. All too soon will the light of the world vanish from sight. But those deities which are free from passion, mindful and conscious, bear it patiently, saying, Transitory are all things. How is it possible that whatever has been born has come into being, and is organized and perishable, should not perish? That condition is not possible. The last conversations continued for some time, and during the course of them the Blessed One gave consolation to the priests. Then he addressed them, And now, O priests, I take my leave of you. All the constituents of being are transitory. Work out your salvation with diligence. And this was the last word of the Tathagata. Thereupon the Blessed One entered the first trance, and rising from the first trance he entered the second trance, and rising from the second trance he entered the third trance, and rising from the third trance he entered the fourth trance, and rising from the fourth trance he entered the realm of the infinity of space, and rising from the realm of the infinity of space he entered the realm of the infinity of consciousness, and rising from the realm of the infinity of consciousness he entered the realm of nothingness, and rising from the realm of nothingness he entered the realm of neither perception nor of non-perception, and rising from the realm of neither perception nor of non-perception he arrived at the cessation of perception and sensation. Thereupon the Venerable Ananda spoke to the Venerable Anuruddha as follows: Reverend Anuruddha, the Blessed One has passed into nirvana. Nay, Brother Ananda, the Blessed One has not yet passed into nirvana. He has arrived at the cessation of perception and sensation. Thereupon the Blessed One, rising from the cessation of his perception and sensation, entered the realm of neither perception nor yet non-perception, and rising from the realm of neither perception nor yet non-perception, he entered the realm of nothingness, and rising from the realm of nothingness, he entered the realm of infinity, and rising from the realm of infinity of consciousness, he entered the realm of the infinity of space, and rising from the realm of the infinity of space, he entered the fourth trance, and rising from the fourth trance, he entered the third trance, and rising from the third trance, he entered the second trance, and rising from the second trance, he entered the first trance, and rising from the first trance, he entered the second trance, and rising from the second trance, he entered the third trance, and rising from the third trance, he entered the fourth trance, and rising from the fourth trance, immediately the Blessed One passed into